Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. This is our second virtual Project Managers Network for the public sector service. We might have the odd technical difficulty, but we will overcome them as we go along. You're all very welcome this morning. As John has said, all your videos and microphones are muted. We will encourage people during the day to participate on Q&A. And there'll be a screen will come up shortly just to kind of give you an indication of how you can. Generally, at the top right-hand corner, there'll be a Q&A icon. You click on that, and you'll be able to then, down the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you should be able to enter in your question. You can pick a panelist, or you can just send to all panelists. And we very much appreciate your participation in that regard. Just to recap, my name is Bridget O'Doherty. I'm the project coordinator for Action Team 10. I work with the Department of Defence, and we coordinate Action Team 10 of our Public Service 2020, which is to embed project and programme management across the public service. And we have a very active team drawn from all over the public and civil service who are very enthusiastic about this. And I also am very well aware that everyone on the call has a huge interest in the area, and this is really all about sharing the knowledge we have in this space and learning from each other. Today's conference in that vein is focusing on training, and we have a very interesting lineup. I'm going to hand over now to one of the co-sponsors on the Action Team, Assistant Secretary Des Dowling from Defence, who will give you an overview of today's proceedings. Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget, and good morning to everybody. Delighted to be able to welcome you to our second virtual Project Manager Network conference. I can see some people, of course, thanks to the technology, so I don't know who's wearing green in memory of the late Jack Charlton. Those of us a certain age were Leeds supporters, so I'm wearing a white shirt, so that's my contribution to that particular piece. As Bridget has said, the Defence Organisation, the Department of Defence and Defence Forces are the lead and sponsors for Action 10 to embed programme and project management in the public service. So we've done a lot of work, as many colleagues will know. I'm just going to rehearse a little bit what we've been doing to date and then look ahead, just to ensure that all of us, if you like, on this call, if you like, have a common view as to where things are at and what perhaps are the priorities in the next period. It's perhaps not as easy to have it as interactive as we might normally do as part of the full conference, but on the other hand, perhaps we're getting a better reach, certainly from a geographical viewpoint in the kind of the virtual format. As I've said, the Defence Organisation is the lead and sponsor, so the Secretary General Maurice Quinn and Chief of Staff Mark Millett, Vice Admiral Mark Millett, are the leads, and I'm sponsor along with the Assistant Chief of Staff Brigadier General Adrian O'Murku. But as I think probably said many times at this stage, our approach was really to build on the work that's being done already, to draw from that expertise, and while we were bringing our own, of course, experience and expertise to this, we were very much taking it on the basis of trying to draw from experience elsewhere, to take a very practical approach and trying to develop things that would be useful to people given their own business priorities. So building on all of that, as colleagues will know, a range of different priorities were set, and we've made very significant progress on a number of those. And indeed, today's work is very much in keeping with that. I may remind colleagues that one of the very practical initiatives was to develop a bank of case studies, which would be available to people to give them indications of other people's experience across the full range of the project management piece, recognizing that you have common aspects, but also, of course, depending on your business requirement, different approaches. And one of the things we have always spoken about is the way in which we have been able to use it with regard to the white paper on defence, which is our overall sectoral policy, and that covers everything from policy issues, perhaps in the management and HR space, through more traditional type procurement or infrastructure development, project management type activities. And we found it an extremely effective model, not just in terms of delivering projects, but actually in terms of supporting governance, whether that be reporting, oversight, training and support. And of course, we will come back to some of these themes later with our speakers, and I'll turn to those in a moment. In addition to the case studies, we have this network which is built organically, I suppose, really from a civil service slash wider public service network and into what we have here. And this again is in keeping with other initiatives, not just within the civil service, but in the wider public service, which is what OPS 2020 is all about. The other principal priority initiative was in relation to the development of a handbook, which again, work had been done in different sectors, but there was a civil service handbook, and it was very important that we developed that into a wider public service one. And that, as colleagues will know, was launched at our network meeting on December last and is now very much live. All of these things, of course, will continue to be updated in the light of experience. Last summer, we engaged in a process of bilaterals across organisations in the public service to see, based on these, what other areas we should focus. And the three that, if you like, really came through extremely strongly was training and development, which is our primary theme for today, but also governance and sustainability. So we've been doing some workshops on these. We've managed to keep going despite COVID-19, and while we weren't able to run a conventional workshop at our last action team meeting, we were able to have a very successful dialogue to continue to develop and keep our work going. I think we can say that regardless of what shape OPS 2020 successor takes, whether that be a 2030 type vision or variations on that, I think we're very clear that project management remains a very important component of the work we have to do, both in terms of overall development of the public service, but obviously in the kind of recovery that we need to pursue in response to what we've all had to deal with as part of COVID-19. I want to then turn maybe specifically just to the governance and sustainability side of it, because one of the strong messages coming through for ourselves certainly was the learning in terms of how you manage and get the best from project management within your organisation. And we've seen, talking to colleagues around the system, that there are a variety of models to support this, and we want to see, if you like, how we can bring the lessons from those and best practice forward to support that. We are also very conscious that you can be at different points of maturity in relation to the deployment of project management, the skill levels, the approaches, and so on. So again, governance is a very important piece to ensure that you can move forward and progressively along that particular road, and trying to maximise the benefits in terms of oversight linked to overall strategic objectives, and in turn linking into what is actually going to achieve good outcomes for the citizen and taxpayer. Sustainability, of course, is critical in all, I suppose, facets of the management. And I suppose those of us who have kind of thought and tried to see, if you like, how you can sustain change in both public and private business, one of the real tests is actually how do you achieve sustained change. We know often terrific things can be done by individuals at a particular point in time, but the question is, how do you manage to sustain that over a period? How do you ensure that when people move on to something else, do the things that were put in place continue? How do you ensure that there's a vision which is sufficiently embedded in the organisation, an approach which, if you like, can evolve, but also manage to maintain all the positive aspects? And this is a common, of course, management aspect, but it's one which we've identified as being very critical to the project management piece, to ensure that all of the work we're doing here now with yourselves, that somehow we can manage to sustain that into the future. And I would suggest that what we put in place in relation to training and development is going to be a very important element to that, to maintain that dynamic, so that it's progressive, it's forward-looking, but also, if you like, it managed to, if you like, be self-sustaining within organisations. I won't say too much specifically on training, because David and Pat, along with the video that Commandant McMurphy is going to present, I think will all reinforce that message. All I would say is that I think it's fairly obvious to, I think, all of us that training and development are such a key bedrock to supporting all of these management initiatives, to ensure that it's timely, to ensure that it's related to the task at hand, and ultimately related to business objectives. You can take it that we want to continue to grow the network. We want to ensure, if you like, that we have the participation that really will be what will make a difference to ensuring that project management and this action is brought to the best outcome that we can achieve. I want to say as well that we want to ensure that we can maximise the reach, if you like, in relation to the action. And while the architecture and OPS 2020 necessarily tends to be related to the main sectors, whether that be local government, education, defence, justice, and so on, we have never seen it in those terms. They are key partners, of course, but we have from the outset sought to ensure that, if you like, we were connecting with wider groups and those who have experience and something to contribute, or those who wish to connect in and learn and contribute in whatever way they can. So you can take it that our endeavour will be to continue to try and maximise that reach in a way that people find useful. Let's turn then to today's proceedings, and many thanks. I referenced Jack Charlton earlier on, so I think we were probably putting poor John O'Donoghue under a bit of pressure this morning here. So thanks again, John, for all your efforts to arrange these virtual sessions. We have 3 contributions today, in addition to the closing from my colleague Adrian Muraku. We have David Healy, and I'm not sure, Bridget, whether we're going to stick with the original format or whether Pat is still going to go ahead.
We're back on track, Des.
We're back on track. So, David, I know you've joined us, but so it's good anyway. We're able to stick with the original format. So, David Healy, we're very fortunate in David, who has led the subgroup on training. David works in the policy unit in the OPW, but prior to that, he had some 15 years' experience in the local government service, and he also worked with SOLAS, the Further Education and Training Authority. So really, we couldn't be better led in terms of the training element of it. And of course, David has worked closely with members of the action team, and has also made connections with, very importantly, One Learning, as part of the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform's role in relation to training and development for the civil service. But of course, we've also been working with the IPA and others in relation to the wider public service. So David will speak to us in relation to the work that the subgroup has been doing. David will be followed by Commandant Mick Murphy, and Mick Murphy is as a regular with us in terms of the very aspects of us, and a vital leader in what we're doing within the defence organisation. Today he's going to demonstrate the launch of the how to use the project management handbook video, which was done in collaboration with the Department of Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. Debbie, I think the name is changing, but anyway, Business, Enterprise and Innovation is what when the work was being done. We're very grateful to Pauline Mulligan and colleagues, Pat Whelan, for their support in being able to do the video, and Mick Murphy will speak to us about that a bit later. Finally, many thanks and welcome to Pat Gagan. Pat is a very experienced project manager. He's head of change transformation, as colleagues may know, in Arvia. Prior to that, he worked with Irish Water and also has long experience in the telecommunications area and project management more widely. So his contribution in relation to developing project management capability really is very much to the point in terms of where we are at now in relation to this overall action. So I think a good morning ahead of us. I'd ask you to contribute as fully you can through the means that are available to you. And obviously there is, as John has said, there is a recording of this, and I would encourage you to, if colleagues, if you like, can't participate today, to see if that can be followed up within your own organisation. So thanks again for your participation, and I hope you have an interesting and enjoyable morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Des. As Des has said, we're going to start now with David Healy, who's the chair of the training subgroup. David will talk for about 20 minutes, and then there will be about 15 minutes of Q&A. So I'm delighted already. Some people have already been commenting on the function. So if people would, as David is talking, if any questions come to mind, please do input them. So just over to you, David.
Thanks, Bridgetta. Thanks, Des. I'm just going to share my screen now, if that's okay. Sorry. For some reason, there is more technical difficulties.
Can John substitute Dave's slides?
Give me 2 seconds.
Thank you, John. We've had the odd technical hitch today, but we'll get there.
Now, just briefly, I need to open up David's slides first of all.
Sorry about this now.
That's okay. Which do you want me to open, David? The spreadsheet or the presentation?
The presentation, please.
Okay.
Joy of modern technology. There we go.
Now, this is yours, David, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I'm just going to hang on. Slideshow and from the beginning, and then you just tell me when you want me to move on.
Yeah, you can go into the third one there, John, if that's okay. So you can skip that one, next one. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, John. So as Des and Bridgetta mentioned, my name is David Healy. I work in the Office of Public Works, and I'm delighted to be here today to provide you all with an update on the work of the Action 10 training subgroup, which was set up last year. As chair of the group, I was really fortunate to be supported by a strong team of project management practitioners and experts from 11 organisations across the civil and public service. Any one of them could have presented today, but somehow we seem to have drawn the short straw. But as a starting point, to provide some context, just to look briefly at our objectives. So there was a kind of a gap that we tried to identify that in relation to competencies. So we looked at defining and codifying competencies and skills required to fulfill the various roles within project management, program and portfolio management in the public service, and then specifically to provide guidance on the training necessary to achieve these competencies and goals. And within that, we essentially had 3 aims. The firstly, to define the various roles and responsibilities personnel may undertake as part of project, program, portfolio management within the public service. And then to move on to codifying the competencies, skills and behaviours required to fulfil each of the roles identified. And this is something that it's quite fortunate and timely that Pat Gagan from Irish Water is presenting, because you look at the importance and the value of having a clear set of competencies in fulfilling project management roles. And then thirdly, to identify and describe the type and level of training to acquire the competencies and skills recommended for each project, program, portfolio management within the public service. John, we might move on. In terms of the purpose and benefits, when we were considering that, we felt it was a really good opportunity to create and define a career path for project managers. And this is something that is haphazard in some organisations, more structured in others, and lacking in many others. So we just felt it was a good opportunity to have a look at that. Use it as a professional development guide for project managers to help advance their career. So regardless of your knowledge or your level of experience or skill sets, this would be able to provide a useful pathway for you. And then thirdly, to be used as a framework for hiring managers and the type of skills needed for each project manager role type. And this is something that is coming more to the fore in civil and public service competitions, where project management is seen as desirable in some cases and essential in others. And that's a really positive development, as it reinforces the value now being placed on project management skill sets and expertise. We'll move on to the next one. There were essentially 4 core elements to our approach. So firstly, we sought to define the job architecture across project management job categories. So in each of these, we looked at project, program, and portfolio management, and then at the related roles in each. So for instance, project team member, project team leader, project manager, right up to program portfolio manager. Following this, we sought to develop and align core roles and responsibilities within each, and then looking at the necessary skills and behaviours associated with these. And just to give you an example of that, obviously this is a public service-wide initiative, so it isn't necessarily going to lend itself easily across the board. But as an example, we took the role of project manager, and in the context of the civil service. So we looked at the role profile. So we said project manager, and we linked it to an associated grade in the civil service of higher executive officer. We then looked at a summary statement of, what might they be responsible for? So manages projects to achieve optimal performance and results. We looked at a description of the role. So we said they define, implement, and manage projects from conception to final delivery. They have responsibility for achieving optimal results, conforming to standards for quality. There's a focus on management and coordination with a concentration on delivering outputs. We then look at some of the main tasks associated with this. So organising, coordinating, and leading the project team, building and maintaining contacts with colleagues and stakeholders, working with a team to facilitate high performance. And there's a list of things here. So then we kind of moved on to perhaps associating with an NFQ, the National Framework Qualifications. So we kind of, again, there's no hard and fast rule to this, that, you might have a project manager experience that might not be a HEO, they might be a higher grade or a lower grade, it depends. But we said that we would look at the level 6 advanced or higher certificate related to project management. Then looking at the kind of the knowledge types or knowledge examples that they would, I suppose, would be familiar with the role. Effective frameworks and methodologies for governance plans, basic decision-making methods, tools for production, application availability of diagnostic tools, and a project methodology, including approaches to define project steps and tools. So looking at the skills necessary to fulfill a role like this, the ability to produce quality plans, ensure and manage adequate information for decision makers, monitor progress of issues throughout the life cycle and communicate effectively. And then we even looked at the personality that would be associated with a role like this. So in terms of aptitude, flexibility, ability to adapt to change in the context of cultural and political realities, which, across the public service, a lot of us would have to deal with. Proactive, can-do attitude, open-mindedness, and common sense. So that's to give a sense of where we were trying to link the associated and relevant kind of the job profiles, the core responsibilities, and then the associated behaviours and skills. And then the final piece of the puzzle, I suppose, as far as we were concerned, was, and certainly as far as today's presentation is concerned, attempting to map the training needs and opportunities to enable each of the identified competencies. So this is the missing piece as far as we're concerned. John, we might move on if that's okay.
Okay.
So we used the Project Managers Network event, which took place last December, as a further opportunity to inform the work of the group and seek feedback from members in relation to project management training and methodologies being used in organisations, whether project manager career paths exist, and the extent to which project management forms part or all of people's day-to-day roles. So just as an example there, looking at the methodology piece and the training currently provided. So, a lot of the usual suspects appear there in relation to Prince2, Agile, Waterfall, the importance of, I suppose, the role of one learning specifically in relation to civil service. In some places, there's a tailored training depending on the nature of the project. There's, in some cases, bespoke in-house training, and I think there's significant opportunities for departments and organisations to look to that in-house or kind of collectively with other similar departments and organisations that might yield to economies of scale. In some cases, there are none. That's the reality of it, and I suppose the training piece we're focusing at the moment is to kind of bridge the gap that exists in some cases, and some suggested there was support for external courses taken by individual staff members. John, can we move on, please? In terms of a defined career path, and again, this was, I suppose, an associated benefit of the work to date that we've been doing, that in the large part, it kind of depends on the organisation or department you're in, but at the same time, we're trying to kind of get to a stage where we can actually outline or define a career path for project managers here on into the future. So in some cases, there was no defined career paths. Promotions were strictly linked to grades only and not PM roles. So that, again, ties in, I suppose, with the generalist nature of some civil service roles. And then someone suggested any structured career path should be linked to measurable metrics and successful project delivery. So basically, if you're able to kind of stand over the work you're doing in relation to project management, that there should be associated benefits with that. John, can we move on, please? So then this is another important thing because in some cases, in terms of our interaction with stakeholders across the civil and public service, there is an element where we have full-time project managers and we have part-time project managers, or we have sometime project managers, in the sense that it kind of might come across their desk very last minute. So someone suggested they were currently working as a project lead for a specific period of time before heading back to the section that they're on loan from. 50% of someone's work is PM, the other half is operational. Someone else was the head of project management office, which supports staff temporarily appointed as project managers for the duration of the respective projects. And then someone else has project management responsibilities as well as their day job. So I suppose we're trying to structure this in such a way where, you know, a path is laid out, that it's not something that is considered as, okay, someone might be able to kind of dip in and out of the project. That I think there's an opportunity here to build up a series of skill sets and expertise across the board. So, you know, you may not be working on projects all of the time, but you're called upon to work on projects that you have the skill sets and knowledge associated with it. John, we might move on if that's okay. So I suppose all of this, we've now reached the stage where we're finalising the certification guide. And this is based on, I suppose, the feedback we've been receiving as part of the project managers networks, as part of the wider Action 10 group, and then colleagues of members of the training subgroup itself. Does Tom keep going? So the purpose of this group, or of the certification guide, is to outline the project management certification available in the market today. So we're attempting to be as definitive as possible, but we are aware there are gaps. So when this does go live, that we will be reliant on, I suppose, members of the network and colleagues to kind of keep us posted that if there's any new entrants to the market, or people have left, or there's new courses emerging. It was to outline the main project certification routes, which are determined by the course content and formal certification offered, and then each route is then summarised. John, we'll keep going. These are just some of the certification options that are, again, the guide itself goes into more detail on this, and a lot of you would be familiar with these anyway. So Prince 2, PMBOK, IPMA, and Agile. And then, John, we move on to the accredited bodies. Alexa, PMI, IPMA, NUI, TU Dublin, Trinity College. So, you know, this is mapped out in more detail in the guide itself. And then, John will go on again. So the idea here was to provide and prepare a central repository using 4 levels. So I suppose what we looked at it, that you might have a project manager who is either interested maybe in just kind of maybe getting a course. So we've kind of termed that maybe as a professional development opportunity. So that they might be just been appointed to a project and need to kind of brush up on an element or a methodology there. Then we have the beginner level, so someone is basically coming in cold to project management, and they're basically trying to get a good overall understanding of the methodology, skills and competencies. Then intermediate, someone who might have been working on a project for quite a bit of time and has some experience on it. Then advanced, even, so it could be a career project manager, or someone who's extensive experience in managing projects. So I'm going to keep going. So then each of the courses that we've looked at, we decided to kind of summarize them under a number of subheadings. So we looked at, these are just some of them, course title and an overview. So basically to provide an overview of what the course entails. Target audience, and the idea here is that depending on your, I suppose, your level of experience, that you'll be able to kind of find yourself in it. So, you know, if you're a beginner, or you're intermediate, or you're advanced, you can kind of identify the type of certification or courses that are appropriate to your area of expertise, whether it's certified, the qualification and certifying body, the methodology, which is very important because that tends to differ depending on the nature of the projects being worked on, or even the nature of an organization. The entry requirements, if there's any, and delivery, that's obviously something that, you know, we are aware that, you know, everyone's got their day job, and this is a particular period of flux at the moment for the last 4 months, which might go on for the foreseeable. So, you know, there's a commitment that staff have to give, you know, if they're, you know, it could be evening classes, it could be weekends. So there is a commitment that staff are being asked potentially when they are carrying a course like this. We looked at registered providers, and then we looked at costs. John, would you mind then opening up the spreadsheet if that's okay?
Okay.
So just for John, that, I mean, what we try to do is we try to kind of quantify the various project management courses available in the market today, and just straight up, it's by no means conclusive, but it should give you a sense of the myriad of certified and uncertified opportunities that currently exist. So as I mentioned earlier on, to this end, if there's any glaring omissions or comments you'd like to make when it goes live, we'd love to hear from you. So just an example, and John, there's a couple of yellow ones that I highlighted, so I'll just look at the first one first. So course title there, Certified Associate in Project Management. There's a course overview provided there, so fundamental concepts and methods of project management in accordance with the official CAPM qualification. Your target audience, and I think this is going to be an important field, depending on your level of expertise and where you need to get to in terms of, in this case, it's aspiring and existing project managers. The NFQ level, if it's relevant. John, we might scroll over there. So then the qualification, Certified Associate in Project Management, CAPM, the certification body, the methodology, any entry requirements, delivery, whether it's online or classroom or blended learning, whether there's exams, the duration, again, this is important, and then the registered provider. John, you might just go back over to the other side and just go down. There's one or two other yellow ones. I don't mind which one you highlight over, just to give people a sense of. Again, this is not necessarily the final format of something like this. That we still are. There's still a bit of work to do on to kind of make it as user friendly as possible in terms of search functions and things like that. So this is another one. This would be more of a professional development opportunity. So it's foundations in project management. So your overview relates to fundamental components, principles, and practices of project management. Your target audience, staff currently engaged in projects. It's uncertified. The NFQ level is not applicable here. Your methodology, your entry requirements. In this case, it is True One Learning, so it's a civil servant. The delivery is classroom. The duration. So it's just, and John, we might just go over one more if that's okay, just on the left-hand side. The idea here is that, when this is live, that a project manager at any stage can get a sense of what the opportunities are out there. So the last one I'll look at here just is a professional diploma in project management. So this program builds on the certificate in project management, so it's a previous course that's available. It covers additional areas, skill areas including procurement, resource management, quality management, managing multiple projects. That your target audience there is practicing project managers. It's a diploma. The NFQ level is 8, and your qualifications diploma in project management. Looking at the methodologies there, Prince 2, Agile, PMBOK. Any entry requirements, certificate in project management or direct project experience. The delivery methods there, the duration, and then the associated cost there. So that just gives you a sense of, I suppose, where we're trying to get to. And, I think we have a fairly kind of detailed list of courses there. Not definitive or conclusive at the moment, but we will be rotating it again in the next kind of few weeks and months. And the idea being that it will be a live document. So if there's any obviously changes, we can update them. And John, if you just go into the last slide, if that's okay. So I suppose just to sum up briefly, I mean, hopefully you will have got a snapshot of the work to date of the training subgroup. I mean, it ties in very closely with the work of the wider Action 10 group, namely in the renewal of the Project Manager's Handbook and the development of case studies booklet, both of which Des touched on earlier on. And I suppose what we're trying to, in completing our work, we're trying to kind of add to the existing suite of documentation that exists in the context of our proposed project management competency framework and a certification guide. Excuse me. And the intention here is that, a project manager will be able to dip in and out as required. So for instance, if you're starting a new project, you might want to look at some lessons learned, or you might be looking to upskill, or perhaps you have a new staff member starting in your department or organization who's completely new to the world of project management. So all of these documents taken together essentially provide a great overview of what they can expect in terms of methodologies, the competencies and skills they'll need to develop, and the training opportunities available. And then just that one, John. And just to kind of sum up, I suppose, in terms of some next steps that we'll be kind of undertaking the next few weeks and months, the competency framework, the members of the wider Action 10 group will be linking in with colleagues and key partners in their own organizations to further socialise the proposed competency framework. So we've, I suppose, taken an abstract approach to it in terms of we've felt that, certain grades or certain roles align with each other, but I suppose we need to kind of go into the departments and organizations in more detail and kind of see, do they align closely with them. And then in terms of the certification guide, as I say, hopefully we'll be finalising that in the next few weeks and months. So the guide and associated documents will be finalised and published on ops2020.gov.ie. And as I mentioned, the document should be considered a living repository, and as such, we're asking members of the network to review and provide any feedback when it does come out. And in that case, if there's any feedback, the joint team at Defence can be contacted. So I think that's me. Okay, thanks for listening, guys. Cheers.
David, many thanks for that, and particularly given the slight technical hitches, well done in overcoming those, and thanks again to John for saving our bacon in this regard. I think that was an interesting roundup of the work of the training subgroup. As David set out, the next few steps really are going to involve a bit more socialisation and feedback. So really this is something we think that people have indicated a need for, but equally we'd like the feedback from individual organisations in relation to the competency framework so that we can actually finalise it and put it out there. But as Dave said, these documents are living documents and they will be updated as time goes by, but we feel we have to start at some point in time. And apologies, it's quite possible we'll miss a course somewhere, just let us know and we'll add it in. I think at this point, just before I go into the Q&A, and we have one or two questions, but I'd appreciate if anyone had any more to add them in. John, I think we might be launching a poll, are we?
Yeah, we can launch a poll now.
Yeah. We're hoping to do maybe 2 polls during the day, so I'm going to open one now that will run through the Q&A, and we'll run another one later in the day. So a question will come up. So like sort of while we're going through the Q&A, you'll see a little screen, a box will come up on your screen. The presenter will open a poll. Would you like to click the poll now? Just click OK on that. And in this question, it's in respect to project management training and development courses, which delivery method do you see is most optimal for the learner perspective? Now, obviously, Classroom at this point in time may take a little bit more effort, but obviously as normality returns to some level, these will all be options. So we'd like people's feedback in relation to that. So Classroom, online, virtual, or blended approach. So you might consider that and feed it back. Again, this will feed back into the work of the training group. So just to go to Q&A, the question from James McCarthy, I think probably for Dave, but I think other people on the panel may like to come in as well. What PM maturity level do you think public service is at on a rough average? So poor, basic understanding, slightly embedded, strongly embedded. So maybe Dave, but anyone else in the panel who might like to come in as well. Thank you.
Thanks. I'll firmly sit on the fence in that one, and I think it's probably in the middle. There's definitely pockets of excellence and expertise in some departments and organisations, and I suppose that's where the project management network itself has been able to build on. And that's not to be critical of the wider civil and public service. I mean, you know, what we're trying to kind of embed significant sea change in some cases, and the purpose of the very suite of documentation there is to kind of provide organisations and departments with a roadmap. And I suppose what it really boils down to is not necessarily the project maturity of an organisation or department, but it's really their requirements. So, for instance, in the OPW, we would be involved in significant infrastructural projects. At the last event, we had someone from TII presenting in relation to road projects. So some departments have a significant requirement for it, whereas other departments and organisations don't. But the idea here is that all staff should have a basic understanding of it, because it will come in handy at some point, regardless at some point in their career. So I suppose it's I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's certainly there's work to be done. But I would be more positive about the opportunities and the perspectives to kind of get to a point that it will be fully embedded in the next couple of years, and the benefits associated with that will be significant.
Josh, maybe I might come in on that as well, please.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, and I suppose it's one that we have, thought about in terms of actually trying to configure an overall approach to Action 10 that makes sense to people, because as Dave has said, and this is definitely our experience in going around, you have the full spectrum. We've seen really excellent pockets of project management delivery. We have seen organizations which have very evolved approaches to overall project management through PMOs and enterprise PMOs. And as Dave said, we've kind of seen where you have good pockets, but not necessarily as well-developed approaches to the governance of these. We have seen, if you like, where organizations have, and I suppose I think in defence would probably fall into this category, that we would have been using project management approaches in a variety of areas, but not universally. And that's what we've been developing. I think as well, maybe, and certainly I speak for myself here, a greater appreciation of how project management can be used across the full enterprise, across from policy issues to the more conventional types of projects, and within that, building connections across work in a different way, but also the skill set that goes with project management. Perhaps in the past we very much focused on things like policy analysis, which often embraces, if you like, project management as a component element, but it may not be the driving element. So this is why we have, in a sense, begun to focus on governance and sustainability as the key piece to try and ensure that, depending on what view, and of course it's going to change over time, but what view we have as to public service maturity, that actually we're linking into what is the actual position for organisations, and that even if they're at the peak of maturity and the peak of capability, they have something to offer, but they also have a necessity to be able to sustain that into the future. And we want to explore, if you like, what that involves and what's necessary to do it. Just in passing, if you don't mind, I might just reference the fact that I was forgetting actually that my co-sponsor Adrian O'Murku is on leave at the moment, so we're fortunate being joined actually by Colonel Rossa Mulcahy, who's the head of the strategic planning branch in the Defence Forces, and Rossa is a close partner on many projects, so I've no doubt he'll be able to contribute to this discussion, but later on. Thanks for that.
I'm not sure if anyone else on the panel wants to come in. If not, I'm noticing a few more questions are arriving. So Catherine Ward's making, I suppose it's a comment or an observation as well. She's saying that different departments treat courses differently and offer different opportunities. And she's noting that she's currently in a course with people from other departments that have their courses fully funded, but her department's only covering a third of the cost. This has to have an effect on people taking up training. Many may not have an opportunity to train. Surely it should be universal across departments. I'm not sure we can make, I suppose, a judgment call on that, but I think it's an interesting point to raise and something that we will take on board in that regard. So thank you, Catherine, for that. A question from Haraz in the Garda Síochána, who's saying, is there any action plans to standardise project management methodology? And I think I can answer that one myself, in that I suppose one of the things we have been very clear all along is that we are not going to advocate one methodology over another. It's very much something that we think is individual to individual departments, organisations, to suit their own purposes and work types. So we've never been prescriptive on type. We are strong advocates that people should have a methodology, and they should have governance, and they should have training, and they should have documentation to back that up. So you should have forms, etc. But very much as an action team and as the training subgroup have set out as well, we're not, I suppose, evangelizing in relation to any particular model. We think that differs from organisation to organisation, and it is something that's an individual choice to suit the work that's arising. But equally, we would advocate that there is a model. So hopefully that answers that question. Just someone else was asking a question as well in relation to will they be able to print down the slides from the PowerPoint and upload to the website? Not necessarily on the training, but it's a very relevant question. And I understand that shouldn't be a problem. So that should be okay. Tommy Sheridan has noted, hang on, I'm reading as I'm going. A lot of public service organisations are focusing on PMO development. Anytime I attend PMN network in person, I make great connections and end up sharing resources documents at a later stage. I'm wondering if a PMO sharing site exists. Is Hive still civil service only? I think at the moment it is, but it is something I know my colleagues in Deeper are working on in relation to trying to make the OPX website that's available to make that wider and more collaborative. We would hope over time to sorry, John, are you coming in?
Yeah, yes, we can actually publish anything we want onto the OPS 2020 website. So if people want PMO documents up there, there's zero problem me setting up a section on that website for that.
And thanks, John, for that, because John's really the one who does all the technical work on this, because he knows the answer. And I think it is something we'll try and expand on. Obviously, as time goes by, we do recognise while the virtual world we're living in is giving us maybe a much greater reach across the country, there is really no substitution equally for people meeting and mingling together and sharing experiences physically. So we would hope to be able to do a blend as we go on. And I suppose to note in that context, I noticed the poll results came up there, and over 50% of people have said that their favourite option is a blended approach to learning, which I think is probably, which is interesting, it's the majority view, because I think that is probably most people's viewpoints on it. Someone, Yanzi, has made a point that I think project managers in public sector have responsibilities more than just PM or program management, like accounting, finance, marketing, organisation, behaviour, economics management, etc., especially at director levels. I was wondering why MBA was not considered. I'm not sure, Dave, did we consider it, or is it there?
Sorry. I suppose we were looking specifically at, I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there that would cover elements of project management. I suppose we were looking at mainly qualifications or certificates that would focus primarily on project management, but absolutely that's something we can kind of look at in a bit more detail. Perhaps we could kind of add another area which would cover elements of project management would be covered in addition to, because I know there are courses out there that are available that obviously it's focusing primarily on project management, but there are associated issues like procurement would be a big one in certain areas as well. So yeah, that's definitely something we can examine before we go live.
Okay. Thank you, Dave, for that. And I think just there's a lot of queries, I think, in relation to the OPF 2020 link, and we will put that up as well so that people who may not be familiar with it will get access, because we have the project management handbook there, and it will be where we will use to put the repository for the competency framework, etc.
Brigitte, the link was also included in the invite email, so if people go back to that, they'll have the link.
Okay, I think we may be reaching the end of the Q&As, unless anyone has any last one they'd like to add in. Okay, and I think we're pretty much bang on time then. So I'm going to now, as one of the things that's been referenced already and was asked about, is the project management handbook, which is something that has been developed, and particularly my colleague Competent McMurphy was very involved in the development of that on behalf of the Action Team 10. And we've now maybe moved on to a next, I suppose, learning aid in that regard in relation to the video that Dave has already mentioned. So I'll hand over to Mick maybe to give a little background on that and show you the video. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, everybody, good morning. Just one moment while I share my screen. John, can you just make me the host so I can share my screen?
I'll do that in 1 second. So. That should be working now.
Okay, thank you, John. Okay, can you see that, John?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, everybody, again, good morning. You're very welcome to our presentation for the launch of the information video on the Public Service Project Management Handbook. The origins of the information video can be found in an innovation initiative which was launched by the Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation, and as A.S. Dowling has said, they're now known as Enterprise, Trade and Employment. And specifically when Debbie launched it was about a series of how-to videos, and these how-to videos covered a series of different videos across the public and civil service, from everything from how to answer PQ, how to deal with an FOI request, amongst others. And in that regard, we were approached in defence, and the working group was approached with regard to if we had anything which we felt would be a benefit, and we felt that the handbook itself would be that the how-to series of videos would be an excellent platform for us actually to create awareness of the handbook out across the public service And so we worked with Debbie to get that made. And in that regard, again, I'd like to thank Pat Phelan and Pauline Mulligan from Debbie for their excellent assistance in helping us to get this video made. Before I actually show the video itself and before we go into the video, we're conscious that some of the audience that are here today may not be aware of the handbook itself and what the handbook entails. So I'll first briefly explain the origins of the handbook and the genesis from where it came. So the handbook can be found, and the origins of the handbook can be found in Action 10 for Public Service 2020. The specific background to the handbook, which ultimately shaped its structure and content, was laid down in the actions listed under Initiative 7 of Action 10. These 3 actions, which you can see on your screen there now, effectively molded our approach to the handbook design and became the guidelines under which we worked and structured the handbook itself. The actions underpinned the content in that we based it on proven models currently in use across the civil and public service, on recognized best practice in the world of project management, and on international standards that are existent and are used across the globe in terms of implementing projects via a project management approach. We designed the handbook to ensure it will be an easy reference guide to the core principles and methodologies of project management and would allow for standardization and consistent approach to project management across the public service. Our overarching aim in the design of the final structure of the handbook was to ensure that there would be balance between it meeting end user needs, being an easy to use reference document, with also providing quality content on project management theory and project management experience from across all sectors of the public service, and indeed from our relations with the civil service. Ultimately, we sought to ensure the design would be in line with best practice and facilitate inculcation of project management methodologies and processes across the public service. And the how-to video will be a significant enabler in helping us to achieve this, in that it will help to create awareness, and we see it as an excellent tool to get knowledge of the handbook out there so that it doesn't just sit on shelves where people are unaware of it, but that hopefully the video will help spread the word that it's out there, and people then can go to the OPS 2020 website, download the handbook, and then use it regardless of whatever role you're fulfilling as part of a project team. So without any further ado, I'll now show you the video.
Public Service Project Management Handbook. Action 10 of our Public Service 2020 is led by the Defence Organisation. Its aim is to embed program and project management. This action sits under the Innovating for Our Future pillar of the Our Public Service 2020 framework. The Innovating for Our Future pillar seeks to support collaboration across the public service and enable the development of innovative and joined-up strategies and policies. The vision underlying Action 10 is to strengthen program and project management to deliver better outcomes across national, local, and sectoral policy areas. Developing and maintaining the public services capacity to program and project manage initiatives is critical to the success of PW priorities. These disciplines require the ability to clearly identify priorities, allocate resources effectively, support timely project planning, and necessary inputs from individuals and organizations, monitor progress, and deliver results in the form of outputs, outcomes, and benefits. The Public Service Project Management Handbook will strengthen program and project management as a professional discipline within the public service and underpin the capacity to program and project manage both current and capital level government initiatives. What is it? It is a project management handbook for the public service, developed to incorporate project management theory and experience across all sectors in line with best practice. It balances the requirement to provide knowledge from across the vast field of project management with the need for ease of use and to meet end-user requirements. As a result, the handbook can be employed by public service personnel with little to no previous project management training, education, or experience, and can be used in a very wide range of contexts. What does it provide? The handbook provides user-friendly guidelines on how to adopt a project management approach for members of the public service, project management methodologies, processes, and frameworks, project management document templates, links to public available to download at www.ops2020.gov.ie.
Strengthening project management will be critical to successful achievement of government priorities, management of public finances, and delivery of public services. Project management facilitates the identification of priorities and the effective allocation of resources, monitoring of progress, and delivery of results. Project management can assist public service to be strategically placed to respond to challenges in the short, medium, and longer term, and we hope that the handbook will go some way to helping in this endeavour. We see that this information video will be a key enabler in creating awareness. The handbook has been available since December of last year, but the uptake on use of the handbook is still, from what we can see, limited enough. So it's important that those of you watching today, if you want to get the video, which will be available in the coming days from the OPS 2020 website, where the handbook is currently available, download it and please place it on your internal department or sector sites so that it's available for people to see and to use, and just to create awareness of it and to get awareness of the handbook out there. As I said, it's something that we believe will be a significant enabler in trying to kind of standardise project management across public service and actually kind of get a uniform approach to it. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. A couple of questions actually come up there. Just before I get to those, John, you might run the second poll that we have just now as well for the next few minutes. Yeah. This poll is in relation to how important do you rate project management professional body or NFQ certification of PM courses with respect to PM practices. Not important, but uncertified training courses equally beneficial or very important. So you might give us your feedback. Again, it's useful for training subgroup. Just to go back to some of the questions that have come up in the context of Mick's presentation, and again, very, very many thanks to Mick and to our colleagues in what used to be called Debbie for their support and assistance in this regard. Darren Kelly has raised the issue for those of us in the civil service. Is the civil service project management handbook still relevant, or is it now superseded by the public service handbook? Just to be, I suppose, to be clear, the public service handbook very much developed and is built on the civil service handbook. So there's huge overlap in both. I suppose the public sector one, we took on board concerns and experiences of our colleagues in the wider public service. So it is probably a slightly wider document. I think it probably is beneficial to our civil service colleagues as well, but there's not a huge amount of differential between both. So you may want to have a look at the public service one to see if there's anything additional if you're already in a state where you're using the civil service handbook. But they can be used interchangeably, I think, in that regard. Mick, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, just on that, Brigitte, I suppose you could look at it as the civil service handbook being version 1 and the public service handbook being maybe version 2.0, if you would. There's a lot of similarities. We built on everything that was in the civil service handbook, and the key fundamentals, there's no change to those, but we've added to them. So there's new principles which would have come into play since the civil service handbook was released, I think, back in 2016 or 2015. And in addition to that as well, there's a lot of new sections on the likes of hybrid project management, use of agile project management, use of Scrum. And there's a lot of new templates as well to support those sections on hybrid and Scrum and agile. So I suppose they are similar, but the project management handbook is built on the civil service, and there's a lot of additions in relation to the current trends and new developments in the whole field of project management.
I think, to be fair, then the answer is probably the most up-to-date version that's available. And while it might be slightly wider, like such, it's very relevant for the civil service as well. Sharon Cleary made a query in relation to PM and interaction with human resource management. And I think the one thing to bear in mind is that the one thing the network's looking at very much, and the action team, is that we wanted to move away a bit from areas where traditionally project management is used for procurement, buildings, etc., ICT, to areas where it may not have been as widespread in its usage, but can be of huge benefit as well. And I think Des touched on that in his introduction. So, like, we in Defence have used it, as Des said, for many of the white paper projects, and they range from traditional procurement, etc., but they also include HR projects, and we would be using project management as a methodology to implement those projects. And I think that is something that we would encourage people, is that to move maybe more into areas which would be non-traditionally used for project management, such as HR, where we think there is quite a benefit from structure in that regard. I also note Yancy George has suggested, I think, adding this PM handbook on the guidance section of CWFM may reach more project managers. So we'll take that on board. Val Lynham is asking, is there a network group for portfolio managers? No, but we're not discriminating against anybody. This group is probably wider than just project managers. It probably has a number of program managers, and portfolio managers are also very welcome. As time goes on by and more people become involved, we may be able to do sort of a sub-network in this space if people are interested. So I think we may have answered the Q&A that's been set to date. Okay, so again, just conscious of the time. Now going to hand over to Pat Gagan, the Head of Change Transformation in Irish Water, for which, from what I've seen, will be a very interesting presentation, please. So I'll hand over to Pat.
Thanks, Bridget, and good morning, everybody. Hopefully, everybody can hear me okay. John, you're going to do the slides, please. I know you've a couple.
Yeah, I just need to open up your one.
Okay.
Okay.
No bother. Just while you're opening them up there, I guess, look, firstly, great to get the opportunity to come in this morning and give you my own experiences from an Irish Water perspective. You know, the discussions by the presenters there, the topics, they resonate quite a bit with what I've done and what we're currently doing. I suppose the whole project management capability is absolutely core to an awful lot of what organisations are doing today. And if I look at it from an Irish Water perspective, it's seen as a very core capability. So hopefully over the course of a couple of slides, I'll bring some of that to life. And at the very end, happy to field any questions that anybody may have. So just a little bit of background on myself. Look, I'm the Head of Change Transformation in Arvia Business Services. And I went into Arvia in 2018 into this particular role as Head of Change Transformation. We merged a number of teams from Irish Water, Gas Networks Ireland Group and Arvia Business Services into one function, and I head that up right now. So my 14th back today will be portfolio and resourcing. I have a project delivery team, I have a change management, and I have a business process optimization group. We would have a team of 40 FTEs. I think people were talking earlier around part-time, full-time resources. These are all full-time resources, all working on projects and programs across the organisation. And we scale up depending on business demand with external parties, and we use a procurement framework to give us that level of flexibility. And probably today we're carrying over 20 resources, and at one point last year we probably had 3 times that. And I think the current environment, we slowed down some of our projects because it's obviously a little bit more challenging for everybody in terms of remote working, but we're still carrying quite a lot of external resources to complement the internal team. I was Head of Business Change in Irish Water 2016 to 2018, and I had the responsibilities of change, portfolio and project management, including PMO, and I'll give you a view where that sits in the team further on. I was part of the establishment programme of Irish Water as a utility back in October 2012. Prior to that, I worked in Telefonica O2 Ireland for the best part of 10 years, a number of roles there. And I probably have been in the area of project programme, portfolio management, the vast majority of my time working in different sectors, so manufacturing, telecoms and utilities. So quite a varied background. John, if you just want to click on to the next one. Just a little bit of context around Arvia. Maybe a lot of people might know about Arvia. Arvia is the parent company it's a semi-state organisation responsible for that strategic national gas and water infrastructure that underpins obviously the growth of the Irish economy. Gas Networks builds and operates one of the most modern and safe gas networks in the world. And then Irish Water is another regulated business, and we're responsible for the operation and maintenance of the water and wastewater assets, and work very, very closely with the 31 local authorities through our SLA arrangements. So John, we want to move on. So just a little bit around the structure of our change and transformation team. I'm on slide 4, John. Yeah. Sorry, next slide. Sorry. Yeah, thanks. So just the structure of change and transformation. So I sit into the head of business solutions. I've my 4 teams there on the caption. My PMO capability sits across 2, one around the portfolio and resourcing area, and the second team is my project delivery. My 4 teams work very, very closely together in terms of delivering a full end-to-end capability for the organisation. I suppose some of our aims and our ambitions that we create and embed one transparent, consistent way of working. So it was really good to hear that you guys are building your handbook and you're rolling that out, and I think it's very, very important. We have that. We have a very strong portfolio governance around our projects and programs. We obviously have embedded our project management methodology across the organisation. So whether it's a project we're building for Irish Water or something that we might be doing in Gas Networks Ireland or even our group function, that same look and feel approach is being adopted. And obviously through our phase and gate methodology, we really try and drive improvements around the quality of outcomes for the organisation. I suppose also very, very important for me is that there's transparency, so that we're very, very clear at what stage any of our projects and programs are. So again, single version of truth reporting would be hugely important. And where can we have synergies in the future across our projects? So we learn the lessons, we apply them back to future projects and programs. So there's some of the aims and the ambitions on that particular slide that I want to kind of just bring to life a little bit. John, if you want to go on to the next slide, slide 5, please. So I might get into not too much detail, but just kind of give you a sense of when we were developing or building our own PMO capability in Irish Water, where do we start? And it's an endless journey, it's continuous. But the first thing we did is look at our people, create one team. So we had pockets of resources around the organisation doing project management, so we brought them all into a business change function. We built a culture there really around high performance, ownership, responsibility, and really developed out the skills of the resources that we had in the team. So there was the guys talking a little bit around the certification, whether it's IPMA, PMI or Prince for our project managers. As practitioners, there is a requirement to be certified, and that's really just a basic that we expect. We've also hired quite a mix of senior and junior just to have a nice blend within the team, but also we looked at the sort of skills and the backgrounds. There is a real tendency in a lot of organisations to hire in technical resources because we have to do technical projects. I find that you don't need those technical PMs as much. There's a lot of technical subject matter experts in the organisations, whether it's in the IT organisation or elsewhere. They can bring that skill set, but what we really need is project managers very focused on end-to-end and working with the organisation. Also important there is that we build a career path. So how do we go from a junior project lead who's working supporting a project to being a senior project manager who's going to lead out on a complex project for the organisation to a program manager. So again, we try and give them a career. They are individual contributors, but they do need to see that there's a career path in it. So we've spent quite a bit of time in the past building that out. Second thing is really, and I can't emphasize this enough, is really having standardized ways of working. So we've built our handbook, known as our phase and gates methodology. We have a light version for some less complex projects, like one size doesn't need to fit all, but the same approach in terms of the phases, the projects, I guess, progress is important to me. It's based on the PMI PMBOK, so initiate, plan, execute, close, and with a lot of controlling processes around that. I think there was some reference earlier to agile and waterfalls. We would be very much in a waterfall process. We have done some agile in some of our software development and some projects that support some of the bigger rollouts, but typically we're a waterfall organisation. And we underpin it then with a RACI, so responsibilities, accountabilities, who needs to be consulted and informed as we go through the project activities. We have standard templates, RAG reporting, so we're really trying to drive the consistency across our teams. And we have also developed a single site then for all of the project artifacts. So we don't have a PPM tool, a project or portfolio management tool, but we have built a capability on a SharePoint site. Not ideal, but it's fit for purpose. And again, all of the project information, whether it's a project in Irish Water or in any of the other business units, all sits in that particular platform. And it becomes a single version of the truth in terms of reporting out to our key stakeholders as well. We have done a comprehensive training program. I think that's been mentioned quite a bit this morning, and it's good to hear. For all our new starters coming into the team, we bring them through a significant training program. We do a lot of refresher training, both internally and externally for project resources. Like our methodology probably changes every maybe 6 to 9 months. We refresh it based on lessons learned. So you've got to really do the lessons learned, the post-project reviews, and that informs improvements. And then how do we actually go about doing the training on the back of that? So we've really focused hard through the PMO capability area to do that training program. Also very important is the quality assurance and governance aspect. So again, what we're looking for is controlled delivery. I'll refer to it later on, but at one point last year, we probably had 100+ projects running. At one point, we brought it down to 80+ in terms of concurrent activities. What we really need to reassure the organisations were that we had good control. So again, using the stage gate process, making sure that as you move from initiation into plan or plan into execute, that the key deliverables are available, and that we have applied the appropriate governance, whether that's procurement or whether that's back in business cases. All of the things that we would expect, all those artifacts are in the right place at the right time as we move through, so we have that controlled delivery. And the last one then is really establishing a third-party ecosystem. So in order to scale up where you have that peak, you do need to use external parties. So we have built a framework, and we do use the third parties to help us where we might be short on a particular skill set, or we just need more of business analysts or process analysts or change people. So we put a lot of work into having a good ecosystem that everybody understands. So they're the kind of 6 building blocks that we have. John, if you want to move on to the next slide, thank you. Just to give people a sense of, I'm not going to go through this particular slide. This is our framework. It looks complex. It's not as complex maybe as it comes out, but it's a single picture to really show the inputs, the activities, or the key deliverables within each of the phases. We have a lot of gates at the very, very top of the framework. There are responsibilities that the project manager owns through that life cycle. And there are also a lot of activities that the actual project manager needs to coordinate across. And then down the very bottom of that framework is all around our approvals and updates. So whether that's portfolio boards, whether that's governance around contract management, or whether it's governance around investment appraisals, business cases, there's a huge amount to navigate through. So it's just kind of give you a single picture of our framework. John, just move to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Just on, I suppose, capability, my PMO capability sits in 2 teams, so it's in that project delivery and the portfolio and resourcing team. What we really focus on quite a lot is really making sure that we have good, strong interactions and handovers between teams. Some of that is really down to teams understanding roles and responsibilities. Portfolio management and resourcing is very much working back in the business of Irish Water. We do an annual portfolio plan with the business. We do quarterly reviews, a look back and a look forward on that demand. Does anything change linked back to their business plan and their balanced scorecard? Any new initiatives that might be driven off, it might be regulatory driven, so we might have to take them into the portfolio. Really that portfolio management, left-hand side there of the picture, looks at the quality assurance, ensuring that we're adhering to our methodology, and is also, looking at the support capabilities. So we focus quite a bit on benefits management, training, and resourcing, and so on. The handover really is into delivery then. So once we have created the demand and we have agreed and prioritized that with the organisation, it goes into my delivery side of the house, and they are responsible for the end-to-end delivery. So it's really making sure that we have a very clear handshake and ownership between the two. I would say that the framework that we use is not prescriptive. It is there as a roadmap, as a guide to the project teams. There's a lot of smart people that run those particular projects. They know how to navigate through the life cycle. What we want is, though, that there is a very clear initiate activity, a plan activity, an execution activity, and a closing activity. And on some programs, you may have 3 or 4 projects running in a particular program that will be at different phases. But again, it's just to try and have that controlled delivery. So key integrations, we put quite a focus on that. John, if you want to go to slide 8, please. A lot of discussion this morning around the role of the project manager, and I'm just giving a few very, very high-level bullet points here from an Irish Water context. I really see the project manager as conductor of the orchestra. They're the person that makes everything happen. It has to be timed, it has to be planned, they have to be able to delegate, and they have to take responsibility. When everybody wants to be putting their hand and clapping you on the back when the project has gone really well, sometimes projects don't go so well, and the project manager is also the one that, you know, has to take the sort of negative feedback that can come from that. So they are the conductor. They make it all happen, and you know, depending on the complexities, some will be less complex than others. For us, kind of high-level role and responsibilities, they have end-to-end responsibility for both the project and the change aspects. What I mean by that is, you may have a technical delivery. They'll focus on that, but they also need to focus on how we're going to roll out this capability to a particular team, a function, the wider organisation, or from an Irish Water perspective, we have 31 local authorities. So how are we going to ensure that we deliver that successfully? So they have to manage both the project and the change aspects. So full end-to-end responsibility. They've got to work in partnership with sponsors and business leads. So for every project that we have, there has to be a senior manager who sponsors it, and a business lead or a business manager from that particular sponsors, directors, who really own the project objectives. Again, adopting our methodology, our phasing gates, so we really try to drive that discipline across all the projects and programs. You know, again, they're managing everything to milestones, managing the budget, controlling scope, quality deliverables. So there's a lot the project manager has to do. So it is very, very important in terms of the skill and the recognition and you know, the support mechanisms that we put in place to support them. They manage all the relationships, including key stakeholders. One of the bullets there that we have is that they support the full rollout of capability into the local authorities, and we get great support from the local authorities, and we have a change network built to support that rollout, and a lot of the time we do it on a phased basis, but it's a shared objective in terms of rollout. And the very last one there is really ensuring that we have good project governance. The cadence of meetings is clearly understood. When do we need to do project steering? So there's quite a lot that goes on, and the project manager is that conductor, has to make that work, but needs to be able to delegate, because they certainly won't be able to be responsible for it all, but they've got to delegate it out to the various teams that have a responsibility, but they actually look after making sure that the full outcome is understood. So that, John, I might move on to slide number 9. Just on some of the competencies, I won't go in through these in massive amounts of detail, but to really look at it from a knowledge, skills, experience, and attitude. We would have, you know, minimum 3rd level qualification, whether it's in a business or IT related discipline. We'd have a minimum number of years relevant experience. Project management certification would be very, very important to us. Some of those competencies, they have to have the ability to create and develop good working relationships. Like project managers are so important. They're out there leading from the front, and they really have to build the relationships, and they have to be enduring relationships. They have to be able to navigate through complex organisational challenges. Like we would have from a regulated business in Irish Water, a lot of governance, a lot of processes that need to be adhered to. Project managers need to be able to navigate through that as best they can. They've got to be able to compromise at the right times and hold the whole firm at other times. Really plan, work and execute very well. They must be in control of their brief. And I would see them as really completer finisher type individuals. Not afraid to share their knowledge. Really important in my own team that we share the knowledge, so that less experienced or other project managers who are doing similar type projects, they learn the lessons. They understand what others have gone through. But they also have to own setting high standards of performance and delivering the desired results for the organisation. But there are some of the competencies that we would have from an Irish Water perspective. Could just go on to slide 10, John, please. Just to kind of give you a sense of the types of projects that will go on in Irish Water. If I go back to when we established the programme, or established Irish Water with the local authorities back in 2014, we developed a very, very significant transformation programme. We had it built on 5 themes. So the way we work in the future: assets, customer, supply chain, data and intelligence. And we identified very early on 27 big initiatives that were identified as projects, but as we scoped them and worked with the local authorities, some of these became programs of work, and some of them are multi-year in nature. And believe it or not, there's 2 or 3 of those projects still running 5-6 years later, with different rollouts. So just, I suppose some here are very technical, have technical capability rollouts, others less so. I've just on the right-hand side of that particular slide, just calling out some of the types of projects. So, for example, we're doing an ongoing telemetry SCADA program with the local authorities in terms of how we're going to monitor the assets, both water and wastewater, across the country. How are we going to bill our non-domestic customers? So there was a big billing migration program from the 34 at the time to local authorities into Irish Water. We're rolling out environmental information management systems. We're improving the processes and plans in terms of how we would run our maybe some of our water and wastewater assets. Again, there would have been, prior to Irish Water establishing, there would have been 34 possible different ways and how things were done across the network. And what we've tried to do with the local authority is take the best practice approach and really make sure that we redeploy that to all of the local authorities and internally into Irish Water. So that slide there is just kind of giving you a sense of some of the names around some of the projects. But we do try and build the portfolio into teams, and then we run the projects on the back of that. So the skill set then kind of has to vary. Some very, very complex to less complex. So our seniors go on the complex stuff, and those that are less experienced will go on the less complex, but we've got to support them at all times. So John, I might move on to slide 11, please. Some of the benefits for Irish Water in terms of having PMO. So look, I think it's an absolute core necessity. The organisation understands that. One of the big things for us is that there's a common understanding around language, and I think we've embedded that over the last 6 years in an Irish Water context. There's clear structure, there's clear requirements, and there's control. So I'm going back to control delivery, who's being very, very clear who's responsible for delivery within the team, and also making sure that, I guess, as we deliver on those particular initiatives, that we're very clear in terms of time, cost, quality. They're kind of fundamental KPIs that everybody needs to support. We have processes, so again, we're looking for discipline, and I guess because we have that discipline, repetition makes practice better, I think is the terminology that we go. Again, it's making sure that we reuse templates as best we can, so that people are not recreating new ways of working or creating new templates or new deliverables in terms of projects. So what we're trying to do is provide them with the tools and the templates, so less time is spent developing a lot of that, and more time is spent concentrating on delivering on the projects and planning those projects with the organisation. So on the left-hand side there of that particular screen, we're just really calling out some of the benefits. So we have a common understanding, consistency and transparency in terms of how we do our work, how we measure our work, how we report our work, really trying to drive productivity, that we have a discipline within the team, and we're sharing best practice. So they're absolutely key for us. The next slide, John, please. Slide 12. From my own experiences, look, I would say, and this is a very simple slide, you've got to get the basics in place, the basic building blocks. Really in this area of project management, PMO capability, I suppose in the centre where I am now with Ervia, we're trying to build and bring that capability further out into the other business units. But there needs to be a commitment from the management team at the top to really embrace it. So it needs to be seen as a core capability. They see it adding value to the organisation, and that journey just never stops. Similar to the project management methodology, it is a continuous improvement cycle. So customers, stakeholders, they have high expectations. Every time you deliver well, the next time they'll expect that and more. So we've got to always be kind of moving our capability upwards. Implement lessons learned post-project reviews. If there is something I would really emphasise, really do those lessons learned, really do the post-project reviews, and make sure that we don't continuously make the same mistakes. We've made loads of them, and what we're really trying to do is implement the lessons learned so that the project managers or the projects that coming in behind us, they don't repeat the same mistakes. Again, I think it was being mentioned this morning, I wouldn't be too prescriptive to the project teams in terms of how they do their work. The delivery framework is there to manage the projects, act as an aid. They'll deliver good outcomes if they're supported and they understand what's expected. And what we're really looking for is that consistency of performance and repeatability. Something I think that may have been mentioned earlier, one of the things that we did very, very early on when we formed is we did project management maturity assessments, so independent assessments to come in and have a look at where are we in terms of the maturity curve. We've achieved probably PPM level 3 within an Irish Water context. That was good enough. We've got to balance our investments. We've got to look at our approach in terms of how we're applying project management and then how we're deploying this consistently across the team. So I think everybody finds their own level, but we have done that every 18 to 24 months. We've done it on project delivery. We've done it on our change side. And again, I think that feeds into a continuous improvement cycle and action planning on the back of that. John, we might just go to slide 13, please. I'm not going to, I just shared with you the PPM maturity assessments, what that might look like in terms of a level 3 approach and a level 3 deployment. I think there were some of the results that we got. So some numbers were down. Procurement, massive challenges in an Irish Water context around procurement. Maybe our deployment of that consistently wasn't very good, didn't score very well at the time. So we would then put a big focus in terms of our training around that. That's just one I want to bring out there. And John, slide 14, please. So I'll be able to take a breath in a moment and field some questions. So some of the achievements from building the capability in Irish Water. In November of last year, we were voted PMO of the Year through the PMI Ireland chapter of Project Management Institute. We're delighted with our award on that and our little banner there on the screen. We did represent the PMI Ireland chapter in the 2020 PMO of the Year Global Awards in May of this year. We got to the last 16. It was like a World Cup of PMOs. So we got to the last 16 of that. Again, really, really good to participate in that stuff. We will get a report back in terms of maybe how we compared in certain areas to our peers that we were being measured against. So again, we had that in May of this year. I suppose over the last number of years, some real achievements for us is that we've delivered significant water transformations, both projects and programs for Irish Water in support with the local authorities. And it has to be seen as a combined effort. So local authority network has been fantastic supporting us, and we've really transformed in an awful lot of areas over the last number of years. We've really embedded our best practices, and I suppose that has now become a core capability to the wider RVA organisation. So they've seen the benefits of what we've done in Irish Water in the past. We put it into business services in the centre to offer that now to a Gas Networks Ireland business services themselves group, and Irish Water. So that was something that we formed in 2018. Just a couple of other bullet points there. I suppose the capability allows us to give confidence to the organisation that in terms of projects and programs and portfolio management, if you have that centralised in teams that are very capable, people will come to you looking for you to lead out on projects. And through last year, like we had over 80 plus projects running concurrently at different phases across 4 business units. So my portfolio team or my delivery team or my change guys or my process business analysts all work together to ensure that we could deliver those where we're leading them out on behalf of the organisation. Customer sat levels, we measure back into the business units, and from an Irish Water perspective, we were in that kind of 90+% average score, and that's really all about the project manager, the project teams, really working very, very closely with the organisation. And finally, we have done a lot of work in terms of that certification around our project managers, but we're also doing that also for our change managers. And there are some kind of key achievements that I just want to kind of highlight this morning, just to kind of give you a sense of the journey never stops, but get the basics in place. And I think all the stuff that you talked about this morning is really positive, and it's probably good for me as well to kind of resonate, to kind of go, we've put a lot of this stuff in place, and it's starting to bear fruit for everybody. So thank you for your time. I think, John, that's the end. Yeah. So thank you. I know I've ran through that now very, very quickly, but happy, Brigitte, to take any questions anybody may have. Thanks.
Pat, many thanks. And yes, draw a breath there for a moment. I think it was a very interesting presentation.
Thank you. Yes, I was rushing through this quite a bit.
No, I think though the pressure was on you, I think people listening to it have benefited hugely from it, and that there are a number of questions. We've had feedback to say it was a great presentation. Yancy George has come back to say it was a great presentation. She said, what are the first few steps that an organisation should look at to implement PMO? Any guidance documents that you could recommend on implementing PMO in public service? Is there anything that would come to your mind there, Pat, in that regard?
Nothing to mind. It's like, I suppose, like any organisation when they're building out their operating models, it's really understanding, project management is a core capability. Where is it going to sit in the organisation? There has been a tendency in the past to sit a lot of that capability in IT organisations. In Irish Water, we were a little bit more ambitious and we put it into our HR organisation, because what we find is, you can deliver the technology, but it's about hearts and minds, bringing the people with you. So we've kind of put it into that HR organisation in the past, and it really helps when you're working with your business partners, your HR business partners and your heads of HR. How do you bring the hearts and minds of the people along on some of those transformation journeys? I don't have anything to reference. I guess from an Irish Water perspective, we were there early on. We understood the need for it, or the management team seen the need for it, so we kind of built it into the operating models. But if anything comes to mind, Brigitte, I'll come back to you on that.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Pat, for that. And I think that would be interesting as well. Sharon Cleary had earlier asked a question in relation to interactions between HRM and PM. So I think that may give her some more food for thought in that regard.
Yeah.
James McCarthy has one question there. Hi, Pat. Did the project management office in Irish Water get affected much by the political and media back and forth about the establishment of the new utility? Was it kind of chopped and changed a bit, or were you insulated from that aspect?
Yeah, look, it's funny. There were really, really challenging times when I think back to 2013, 2014, 2015. We were in the sort of eye of the storm. I think we tried to insulate ourselves as best we could. We were very clear that we had a program of work to deliver. So you try to keep the focus within the teams. Our structures didn't change. I guess our internal and external communications departments and some of the senior management team and the managing director kind of managed the external landscape. Even when we were establishing Irish Water back in 2013, 14, 15, government policy changed. We had to adjust our projects and programs on the back of that, but we tried to just maintain the focus as to what was the purpose of us being set up, and that was really it. You just had to hold your nerve and keep working as best you could in the climate to continue the projects and programs and the progress that was required.
I think, Pat, that was very useful, because I think everyone knew what a trying time Irish Water had at the start, so it's just interesting to hear the feedback from that. I have one more question there, I think, from the floor, from Lisa Maybury, who's in the court service. She was asking, did you have a transformation partner when establishing your operating model? And if so, how long were you supported for?
Well, when we set up Irish Water back in 2012, like I'm on the team in 2012, 2013, we had a number of partners. A lot of it was done internally with staff, but there was some external support at times when it was required to build the operating model. They could have been on the pitch with us for the best part of 6 months as we built out our capability. But really had to be led by the organisation, because at the end of the day, they owned it, so they had to really put the thought process into the design, and then we used some of our partners to help us to kind of do some of the heavy lifting in terms of documenting what that operating model would look like. But it was led very much by Irish Water. with some of the old Borgosh, Air and BGE resources and our Gas Networks Ireland colleagues who had been through some of that previously when we were setting up the programme.
Thanks, Pat, for that. I think Assistant Secretary Dowling has a question he wants to put.
Thanks, Bridget, and thanks very much, Pat, for the presentation. It was really extremely useful, and I think there probably will be follow-ups all right to draw from your experience.
Yeah.
Could I ask maybe, Pat, maybe two things, and I don't know how easy just to frame this, but closure of projects. Projects are framed in a particular way, and then you have a closure around it. And I'm just wondering what process you have to ensure that the outcomes of those, in a sense, carry forward effectively, and not if, in a sense, you can sometimes have a project to haste to get to the finishing line in a particular way based on the particular objective, but actually there's a task then to carry that forward. Do you stick with the project management methodology, or is in a sense it's a business as usual outside of that methodology to carry the work forward? That's one, and if you don't mind, it's kind of unrelated to the overall stewardship, and it's this. The initial stage of establishing timelines for projects, this of course often tends to be problematic. People can be over-ambitious and so on. And I was just curious, do you have any comments to make as to how you manage that process as effectively as possible, that you have sufficient ambition, but not that you don't take on more than you can chew, in a sense? Thanks.
Okay, no problem. I might go to your first one in terms of the closeout. I suppose there is a huge effort made by the project teams, the business, in terms of hitting a go live date, what we call a go live date, or where we might have a phased rollout over maybe a 3-month or even a 6-month period, depending on the capability, to our 31 local authorities, and working really in conjunction with them. The project manager has to stay on the pitch and has to still continue to own that with the change managers. But one big part, and I suppose everybody wants to kind of get the project done and walk away, but the project manager has to do a closeout report. One key deliverable that we have within our projects is a benefits plan, benefits management plan. So right up front, we identify the benefits and how we're going to measure whether that's financial or non-financial benefits. It's easy, like people say, well, we should be able to really manage the benefits. Like we've a resource who really goes into the projects to look at the benefits management aspect. The project team, the business owner, the sponsor, they just want to get on with doing the project. So they have just justified why the project is important in the very early stages of kind of what we call value statement before we initiate it as a formal project. But the benefits management plan is something that post the go live and maybe into year 1 or year 2, there's still some benefits required. The benefits manager will work with the business lead or the sponsor to see them through. That's typically how we would follow through after the project team have kind of stepped down and gone on to something else. If there was future deployments to support maybe some of that capability that wasn't put in as part of the original scope, that may come back in as a BAU, what we call release, maybe a piece of capability that would come out as part of release management. We may or may not lead out on that, or if there was a subsequent project, then we'll come back into the pipeline and get delivered. So I don't know whether, Des, I've answered that clearly for you, but there's definitely an ownership piece there post the go live in that closeout that the project managers own. And then from a benefits perspective, that will maybe even travel a little bit longer. That will be owned by the business, be it the sponsor or the business lead, in terms of that level of accountability.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so the second one, and is a really challenge for us all in project management, is timelines and planning. Some of the projects that we've done in the past and some of them that we currently have, there's some predefined dates. There might be regulatory, so we might have to have something implemented regardless of how we're going to or how much time we believe we might need. It's just really coming from maybe government policy that on the 1st of May 2021 certain project needs to be live, and we kind of reverse plan back from that. So what you're really trying to do is understand how in that sort of timescale can we get a design, a build, and a test, and a full rollout plan implemented. There is a real tendency, and we've done it ourselves in our own team, to happy path plan. So, business want to get something delivered early. They're looking for a date. We're trying to appease them. Sometimes you have to kind of hold back a little bit and have detailed planning sessions, not to happy path plan, because that's only going to bite you at a later stage, whether it's in your execution stage of your project, where you're not going to make it. So we've put a lot of effort in over the last while, cross-functionally with IT colleagues, business colleagues, certainly in the areas of what we call user acceptance testing. We really have understated that from a business perspective in the past. So we've tried to build some of our lessons learned back in to not be doing happy path planning, but it has been a bugbear of all of us in the past. Hard to get out of it, but you just have to kind of work through the detail with the business so that they understand clearly where you're coming from. Or you might have to de-scope if the timelines can't be met based on the full scope. You may have to do a bit of de-scoping, and there might be a phase 2 or phase 3 of that project at a later stage. Does that help you, Des?
Yes, indeed. Very useful.
Pat, many thanks for this. I think there's been huge interest. I know you were mentioning timelines, we ran over a little bit.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It's actually the enthusiasm and interest that's coming from the floor has been phenomenal in this regard. And in that, I suppose there's 2 other questions that have been written. I don't particularly want to spend too much more time given the fact we're coming towards the deadline. I think someone, Val Lynham, is looking for Pat to share some of his lessons learned. They're currently establishing PMO and PPM in a large government department. So maybe, Pat, you might think about that and maybe even pass us on something. We can share the presentation in any event. And I think to finish on, Blanad Duan, with potentially reduced finances into the future, I think it's something we're all concerned about. How do you prioritise projects and indeed drop some projects? And we'll finish on that question.
Yeah, very good question. Funding is a real challenge. We have it in Irish Water ourselves. Current climate is putting pressure on more and more on funding that's available. We do our portfolio plan with the business. We know what the investment envelope would look like. We create the demand. We put a lot of work into assessing how much we think those initiatives are going to cost. We align it back to the business plan for the organisation for that particular year. So have we alignment back to their business plan, and then what contribution that initiative is going to make to the business plan. Some of that can be a little bit subjective, but we would do a portfolio review with the senior leadership team in Irish Water, and we may start out with, I'll just throw out a number. You may start out with 50 initiatives that they want to get done. Some will already be in life. So they need to be finished, so they need to be funded. So we ring fence that. And then we really have a prioritization exercise with the senior team until we get to a stage on the portfolio plan where funding can only go to maybe project number 21, and everything below that then gets queued if more available funds come at a later stage. So you have to do the prioritization. It has to be linked to business objectives and the business plan, and the senior team make the decision. And then what we really try and do is fulfill that by putting it on the portfolio, assigning the right resources, and delivering it within a CapEx envelope or an OpEx envelope for that particular initiative.
Pat, many thanks, and many thanks for all the effort and answering everyone's questions.
No problem, Brigetta. And look, if anybody wants to, offline, if you want to share my details, I'm more than happy to, talk to anybody at some stage down the road if that helps, if they want to do a follow-up.
Thank you, Pat, and I think that's one of the things we keep trying to do, to join up the dots across the public service.
Yes, very important.
Thank you. Just before I hand over to my colleague, Colin Ross McCarthy, I just want to give you the last poll result, which was slightly wider than the last one. It's how important do you rate project management professional body or NFQ certification of PM courses with respect to PM practices? Nobody really said it. I think it was 0.7% said not important. 38.5% said important, but uncertified training courses are equally beneficial, and 30% would have said very important. So there's I think everyone agrees that they're important, but there is a slight majority of that uncertified training courses are equally beneficial. So it's interesting feedback, and thank you again for that. So I'll just hand over to Ross for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Brigetta. I hope everyone can hear me. Russell Mulcahy is my name. I'm masquerading as Mick Murphy's profile here due to technical difficulties on my side. And I'm also representing Brigadier General Adrian Muracle, who's a co-sponsor with Assistant Secretary Des Dowling for this action. So, in fairness, Adrian, he had project managed himself to be on holidays at this time, so I have to commend him on reaching that milestone. Look, up front, I'd just like to thank all of our presenters today. We had three really good presentations and discussions, and as Brigetta said, a lot of good discussion generated. So there was a lot of synergy across the three speakers. I think the focus on the competencies, the importance of the handbook that David raised, and then that was doubled on by Pat and the RV Irish Water experience, and how they have used those, recognize the importance of the skill set, the competency, and the use of the handbook to enable their personnel to deliver on projects. And that was a key message that came across from both sides, that it's about project delivery as opposed to project management. That's where the success lies. From our own side of the house, from the Action 10 team, I'd like to thank all in defence who got this network meeting up today, and also for John and Deeper for his support and work in the background. It's been great. And Mick's own presentation about the handbook, I think that's a really useful tool. And as he said, he encouraged people, and we all do, to upload that video onto your own networks to get that message out there. And hopefully we'll have a lot of hits on that network or on that handbook as well. And that'll be a driver for change across public service. And I'd just like to recognize Mick. This is probably his last forum. He's moving on from his role here in Defence Force Headquarters, next phase of his career. And I wish him all the best on a career course. And that'll challenge him, and he has to project manage his way through that course as well. Just to wrap up, so just to highlight, so the focus here was on the training aspect of project management, and that training is one of the 8 initiatives under this Action 10, and the integration of project management into the training across the public sector is the key objective of Action 10, and it'll be a significant enabler for embedding project management in the public service. And the work of the training subgroup to define and codify the competencies and skills required to fulfill the various roles required for project, program, and portfolio management in public service. It provides guidance on the training necessary to achieve these competencies and skills, and it's a critical step for standardizing the language to project management and the nature of how project management is performed across public service. The project management training is the critical piece for embedding that project management into the public service, and the work of the training subgroup has been vital in this regard to date, and I want to commend them on that work. And just to close out, so given, as Brigetta said, we've run a bit over time here, we also haven't set a firm date for the next project management meeting. We're going to review the government guidelines in that regard, and what we can do will be a virtual, or most likely will be another virtual one. But as soon as we've bottomed out on that, we'll get the word out as early as possible and let you know what the next theme will be, and also what the likely date is. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks, Russell. Thank you, everybody, and I'd say now time for everybody's lunch. So goodbye. Thank you for attending, and we will have the video. Thank you.